Hello everyone. If you love heartwarming animal stories and want to follow the inspiring journey of these adorable friends, don't forget to hit the subscribe button now so you won't miss any of our videos. Now, let's dive into today's emotional story. Emma was born under the most delicate of circumstances. A premature infant, she weighed barely 3 pounds when she arrived in the world, too small to survive without immediate medical intervention. The sterile walls of the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU, were her first home, and the steady hum of machines became the only sound Emma could recognize. Her tiny body was fragile, hooked up to 4 lines, oxygen tubes, and other life-saving devices. The first few days of her life were touch and go. The doctors worked tirelessly, but there were still so many uncertainties. Lily, Emma's mother, sat at her baby's bedside for hours every day. She couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Each time she reached out to touch Emma's tiny hand through the incubator, she hoped for a sign, something to tell her that Emma would make it, that her daughter would survive. She and Mark had been so excited when they found out they were going to be parents. But now, all they could do was watch, helpless, as their little girl struggled to live. The days dragged on in a blur of hope and fear. Emma's condition fluctuated, and though there were moments of slight improvement, she was still far from stable. Her underdeveloped lungs and weak body meant that she could hardly breathe on her own. The nurses and doctors did their best to assure Lily and Mark that this was common for premature babies, but nothing could ease the ache in their hearts. They were living a nightmare, one they never imagined they would face. Mark was beside himself with worry. He tried to stay strong for Lily, but deep down, he couldn't help but feel like there was something more they could be doing for Emma. His thoughts wandered to the future, to the life he envisioned for his family. He imagined a time when Emma would be running around, laughing with her friends, growing up and becoming a strong, independent woman. But right now, that future seemed so far away. As days passed, Lily and Mark took turns staying at the hospital, never leaving Emma's side for long. They both knew that Emma's survival wasn't guaranteed, but they held on to the hope that somehow, against all odds, their daughter would make it through. The isolation of the NICU was overwhelming. They felt disconnected from the outside world, from everything that had once felt familiar. The strain of those early days started to take its toll on both parents. Their exhaustion was evident in the dark circles under their eyes, in the way they spoke softly to each other, always careful not to disturb the quiet hum of the hospital. They were both physically and emotionally drained, and neither knew how long they could continue this way. One evening, as Mark sat by Emma's incubator, his phone pinged with a notification. It was an email from a local animal shelter. He clicked it out of sheer habit, scrolling absent-mindedly through the message. The shelter was running a special campaign on adopting rescue dogs, particularly those that had been abandoned or found in bad conditions. Mark had never been one for impulsive decisions, but as he glanced at the pictures of the puppies, one caught his eye, a small, scruffy golden retriever mix with soft brown eyes. The message beneath it read, "Looking for a loving home. Will you be the one to make a difference?" The idea struck him like a bolt of lightning. In the midst of the heartache they were experiencing, could a dog provide them with some comfort? Could the presence of an animal offer something tangible, something more than just the hope of survival that the doctors had offered? Mark hesitated. They were so focused on Emma's recovery, and bringing a dog into their lives seemed like a huge responsibility. But there was something about the puppy's face that pulled him in. Lily had always loved animals, and Mark knew she'd been thinking about getting a dog for years. Yet, with Emma's health still in question, it seemed an unthinkable move. Still, There was a strange sense of possibility in the thought of welcoming a new life into their home, something that could help them feel connected to the world again. The next morning, Mark showed the picture of the puppy to Lily. They both agreed that it could be a good distraction, a way to bring some comfort into their chaotic lives. After spending a few hours thinking it over, they decided to adopt the dog. They visited the shelter that afternoon. The puppy, named Benny, was a small bundle of joy. His soft golden fur gleamed in the sunlight as he bounded toward them. Despite his small size, Benny exuded an undeniable energy. He had an infectious zest for life, and his presence immediately seemed to lift Mark and Lily's spirits. When Benny nuzzled his way into Lily's lap, it felt like a sign, a gift that might help them through the difficult days ahead. They brought Benny home the very same evening, unsure of what the future would hold, but hopeful that this new addition to their family would bring some much-needed light into their lives. It wasn't long before Benny's playful nature and infectious energy became a steady source of joy and comfort for Lily and Mark. They had no idea just how much this little puppy would help Emma, or how his presence would become a key factor in her healing process. Benny quickly became a source of comfort for Lily and Mark, even as their thoughts remained focused on Emma's fragile health. They had hoped for a distraction, a bit of warmth, and perhaps a reason to smile. What they hadn't expected was how much the puppy would influence their lives in such a short amount of time. Lily, who had spent countless sleepless nights by Emma's side, found herself drawn to Benny's playful spirit. Despite the uncertainty that surrounded Emma's condition, Benny's presence gave her a sense of normalcy that she hadn't felt in weeks. As the days went on, Benny became a constant presence in their home, his energetic tail wagging whenever anyone entered the room, his warmth a reminder that life could still hold moments of joy. Mark, too, found comfort in Benny's company. The days spent sitting next to Emma's incubator had taken a toll on him emotionally. The emotional exhaustion was slowly creeping in, and the weight of it felt suffocating. But Benny's boundless enthusiasm was an antidote to the heaviness. When Mark would return home from the hospital, he'd be greeted by the dog's joyful barks, as if Benny was saying, "Welcome back. Let's play." It was a refreshing change of pace. Benny seemed to sense Mark's weariness and would curl up beside him, offering quiet companionship. He wasn't a healer in the traditional sense, but Benny's presence was enough to lift their spirits in a way they hadn't thought possible. But it was Emma who was the real beneficiary of Benny's unwavering affection. At first, she didn't seem to notice the little dog. Emma was still weak, still struggling with the fragile state of her health, and her tiny body couldn't do much more than sleep or breathe. But every time Benny was near her, he would softly nuzzle his way into her crib, his small body warm and comforting. He would lie next to her, keeping watch over her, as if he knew how vulnerable she was. For the first time since her birth, Lily began to see a small change in Emma. She seemed to find solace in Benny's presence, her little face softening whenever the dog was nearby. Though she couldn't respond, Lily could tell that something about the dog's warmth was making Emma feel a little less alone. As the days passed, Benny's visits to Emma's crib became more frequent. He would curl up beside her crib, resting his head on the edge and gently pawing at the side to get her attention. Emma, though unable to speak, would often reach out with her tiny hands toward Benny. It was as though she instinctively understood that this small, fluffy creature was there to help her, to comfort her in her time of need. Lily began to notice that Emma seemed to cry less when Benny was around. Before Benny's arrival, Emma's cries had been heart-wrenching, loud and persistent. They were often a sign of discomfort or distress, and Lily would immediately rush to her baby's side to soothe her. But with Benny by her crib, Emma's cries became softer and less frequent. She seemed to settle when Benny was near, and her tiny body appeared to relax in his presence. The change was subtle at first, but it didn't go unnoticed. Emma's breathing, once shallow and labored, began to stabilize. Her little body seemed to absorb the warmth and calmness Benny brought, and over time, Emma started to show signs of improvement. She was gaining weight, her body growing stronger by the day. Though it was still early to celebrate, Lily felt a growing sense of optimism. Mark, too, was touched by the difference Benny was making. He had never imagined that a dog could play such an important role in Emma's healing process. Benny wasn't a trained therapy dog, he was just a rescue pup who had found his way into their lives. And yet, his loyalty and affection were clearly helping Emma heal in ways that medicine alone couldn't. As the days turned into weeks, Emma's condition continued to improve. She was still small and fragile, but she was no longer the helpless, sickly baby that had been fighting for every breath. Emma began to open her eyes more often, looking around at the world with curiosity. And every time she looked toward Benny, there was a soft smile that formed on her face. Benny, in turn, would respond with a wagging tail, as though he was proud of his little friend for growing stronger. Lily and Mark began to feel a renewed sense of hope, watching Emma flourish before their eyes. The doctors, who had once been cautious and reserved, began to express their optimism. Emma was showing improvement in her motor skills, and though she still had a long way to go, the doctors were encouraged by the progress she had made. It wasn't just the medical care she had received that had made the difference. Benny's presence was playing an equally vital role in Emma's recovery. As Emma continued to thrive, Lily and Mark found themselves more and more grateful for Benny's companionship. He had become a part of their family in every sense of the word. Not just a pet, but a healer, a source of love, and a constant reminder of the power of unconditional companionship. Benny had shown them that even in the darkest of times, love and warmth could make all the difference. As the weeks passed, Emma's progress became more evident. The once fragile, tiny baby who had fought for each breath now looked stronger and more vibrant every day. It wasn't just the medical treatments, but Benny's constant presence that seemed to help Emma thrive. Benny wasn't just a puppy, he had become her quiet guardian, and their bond had deepened in ways that words couldn't fully capture. The daily routine had slowly transformed into something that was more hopeful. Emma, although still small for her age, had gained a bit of weight, and her breathing had become steadier. Lily and Mark noticed that she seemed more alert, and even her little hand would reach out towards Benny whenever he nuzzled her gently. She looked at him with wide eyes, as if recognizing the gentle comfort he provided. There was something calming about his presence, his warmth, his gentle nudges, and his soft, rhythmic breathing beside her that made Emma feel less alone. Each day, Benny seemed to grow more attached to Emma, as if he knew his role in her life. He was always at her side, curling up next to her crib or softly lying by her feet whenever she napped. He was a constant presence, quietly watching over her as she slept, and even when she was awake, Benny remained calm and patient, lying next to her as she adjusted to her new life. Lily, who had been by Emma's side every moment, began to feel a weight lift from her heart. Watching Emma start to react to Benny, to smile when he nudged her with his soft little nose, filled Lily with a sense of peace. Emma's cries had become less frequent, and even when she did cry, she wasn't as frantic. It was as though Benny's presence gave Emma a sense of comfort that made her feel safe enough to express her needs in a softer, calmer way. At night, when Lily would check on Emma after she had fallen asleep, she would often find Benny curled up beside her, his little head resting on the edge of the crib. He was always vigilant, making sure his little friend was okay. It was as if Benny had taken on the responsibility of watching over Emma, as if he knew that she needed him just as much as Lily and Mark did. The bond between them grew stronger by the day, and the sight of Benny sleeping by Emma's side filled Lily's heart with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. One afternoon, after Emma had been awake for a while, Mark decided to take Benny for a walk. It had been a few weeks since he had spent some time away from the house, and the weight of the months of worry was starting to wear on him. He needed a break, even if it was just for a short time. Lily offered to stay with Emma while Mark went for a walk, promising to call if anything unusual happened. As Mark walked through the park, Benny trotted happily beside him. His tail wagged in rhythm with his steps, and every now and then, Benny would stop to sniff the air or bark at a passing butterfly. Mark smiled to himself, grateful for the normalcy of it all. It had been so easy to get caught up in the worry of Emma's health, but now, as he walked with Benny, Mark felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Benny had helped him too, in ways that Mark hadn't fully realized. His loyalty, his unwavering companionship, had brought some calm back into their lives. He wasn't just a dog. He was part of the healing process for the whole family. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lily had her hands full with Emma, who was now becoming more active. Emma was reaching out for toys, smiling whenever Lily made silly faces, and showing signs of physical strength that Lily hadn't thought possible only a few weeks ago. Benny, as always, remained by Emma's side, his soft eyes watching over her every move. Lily sat beside Emma's crib, gently encouraging her to reach for a rattle. To her surprise, Emma stretched out her hand and grabbed hold of it. "Good job, sweetheart," Lily exclaimed, her voice full of pride. Emma looked up at her mother, her eyes full of joy as she held the toy in her little hands. And right there, beside Emma, Benny gave a soft bark, as though he were cheering her on. His enthusiasm was contagious, and Lily couldn't help but laugh. She knew that they had a long road ahead of them, but seeing Emma take such a big step in her recovery made everything feel worth it. She looked at Benny, who had grown so close to their family, and felt a deep gratitude for the dog that had brought so much love into their lives. Benny wasn't just a dog. He was a companion, a helper, a friend. He had been there for Emma when she needed someone the most, and now, as Emma began to grow stronger, Benny was right there beside her, cheering her on in his own quiet way. As the days went on, Emma's development continued to improve. The once fragile baby, who had been fighting for her life, was now a little girl, sitting up on her own and starting to reach for toys. And Benny was always there, by her side, as though he knew that his role in her life wasn't just to comfort her, it was to help her grow and thrive. Together, Emma and Benny had formed an unbreakable bond, one that neither of them could have predicted, but one that had become a crucial part of Emma's journey to recovery. As the weeks continued, Emma's transformation became more and more remarkable. The once fragile baby, who had been so small and weak, was now gaining weight steadily. Her little hands had become stronger, and she began showing more interest in her surroundings. But it wasn't just the physical healing that had changed Emma, it was the emotional growth that had blossomed, thanks to Benny's unwavering love and presence. Emma's connection with Benny deepened as she began to interact more with him. Benny, always patient and gentle, never grew tired of being by her side. He remained attentive to her needs, often lying by her crib with his head resting on her little feet. There were days when Emma's tiny giggles filled the room as Benny playfully licked her hands or nuzzled her cheek. It was as though Benny had known all along that his role wasn't just to be a dog, but to be a source of love, comfort, and encouragement for Emma. Lily and Mark watched in awe as Emma started to smile more often, something that had been rare in the early days of her life. The sight of Benny curled up beside her, keeping watch over her as she slept, became a daily comfort. He was no longer just a puppy, they had become inseparable companions. One evening, as Mark sat beside Lily in the living room, watching Benny and Emma together, he finally spoke what had been in his heart for a while. "I don't think I've ever seen Emma so happy," he said softly. Lily smiled, her eyes soft with emotion. "It's Benny. He's been her little miracle." Mark nodded, his hand gently resting on Lily's. "I think he's helped all of us heal, not just her." They both watched Benny, who had now rolled onto his back, letting Emma grab onto his fur with both hands. There was a warmth in the room, a sense of completeness they hadn't felt before. The love and joy Benny had brought into their lives were beyond what words could express. And Benny, with his loyal eyes and joyful heart, had given them all a gift of love that transcended everything else. Emma was thriving, growing stronger with each passing day. Benny had not only been there for her physical recovery but had also helped her find the emotional strength to navigate a world that had once felt so overwhelming. Emma's progress was steady, and as each new milestone was reached, Benny was there to cheer her on in his quiet way. He had never given up on her, even when the doctors weren't sure how much she would improve. Benny believed in Emma's strength before anyone else had, and that belief had made all the difference. Together, they were a team made up of unconditional love, patience, and trust. By the time Emma's first birthday arrived, she was a completely different child. She was sitting up on her own, playing with toys, and even taking her first small steps with the help of her family. Benny, always by her side, had become a symbol of the healing power of love. His presence had made all the difference in Emma's journey, helping her grow, learn, and thrive. As they celebrated Emma's first birthday, Lily and Mark couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. It had been a long and difficult road, but with Benny's support, they had made it through together. The family was stronger, and their bond with Benny had only grown. They knew that no matter what challenges the future would bring, they would face them as a family, united by love and the incredible power of companionship. Emma, with Benny by her side, was no longer the fragile baby they had brought home from the hospital. She was a strong, happy, and thriving little girl, ready to take on the world. And Benny, with his unwavering love, was her constant companion, her protector, her friend, and her miracle. And so, with the love of their little family and the bond between Emma and Benny, they stepped forward into a future full of hope, joy, and endless possibilities. The story of Emma and Benny highlights the profound healing power of love, companionship, and animal support. It teaches us that emotional and physical healing can often be intertwined, and that the love of an animal can provide a sense of security and comfort that helps individuals overcome difficult challenges. Emma's journey from fragility to strength, aided by Benny's unwavering presence, reminds us of the importance of patience, perseverance, and unconditional love in the healing process. In real life, many children facing medical or emotional challenges, especially those born prematurely or dealing with disabilities, can benefit from the companionship of animals. Dogs, like Benny, offer more than just company. They provide emotional stability, help reduce anxiety, and encourage children to push past their limitations. The bond between humans and animals has been shown to improve mental health, boost confidence, and provide a sense of belonging. Just as Benny helped Emma regain her strength, animals in real-life scenarios are often the silent healers in children's lives, making a significant impact on their recovery and well-being. This story serves as a reminder of the importance of compassion, love, and the healing connections we share with animals.